Admiral Kevin Carter stood in the command center of strategic operations and watched Earth rotate slowly below. The blue planet looked peaceful from orbit, but beneath that calm surface, humanity was awakening. Message from Commander Hayes confirmed. Lieutenant Rebecca Torres reported from her station. The Krenathi have issued an ultimatum. And our response? Carter asked, though he already knew. Declined. General Patrick Monroe said as he entered the command center, "We're not backing down." Carter nodded and gestured to Dr. Melissa Grant. "Show them what they've forgotten." Grant activated the central hologram, and the war room filled with light images from 3,000 years ago appeared. Burning colonies, shattered fleets, desperate battles in the void. The First Contact War lasted 20 years. Grant began. The Krenathi Empire attacked our earliest colonies without warning. Young officers who had only known peace leaned forward. Humanity was new to space travel, and we had primitive weapons compared to the Empire. The hologram showed human ships, clunky, inefficient, held together with determination. But we had something the Krenathi didn't expect. The images shifted to show battles where human forces won through tactics and innovation. We adapted faster than they could plan. Grant continued. Every defeat taught us something new, and we never made the same mistake twice. The Empire had superior numbers and technology. Monroe added, but humans had creativity, stubbornness, and rage. The hologram showed the tide of war turning human. Colonies holding against impossible odds. Human. Fleets striking where the enemy didn't expect. Human soldiers fighting with whatever they could find. By year 15, we were winning, Grant said. Quietly, officers stared in surprise. History taught that the treaty came from mutual exhaustion. That wasn't quite true. The Krenathi came to us. Grant revealed. They offered terms because they realized they couldn't win without destroying themselves in the process. Why did we accept? A young lieutenant asked. Monroe answered, because our leaders were wise, and they saw that winning the war would cost us everything we were fighting to protect. So we agreed to limits. Grant said, we would stay within our assigned territory, and the galaxy could sleep peacefully. The hologram changed to show human space. 13 worlds glowing in the darkness. The council thought we surrendered, and the Krenathi told everyone they had contained the threat. Grant smiled slightly. They forgot to ask what we were doing during the 3,000 years of peace. The hologram exploded with new information. Hidden bases appeared throughout the galaxy, research stations far beyond the official boundary, sensor networks spanning light years. We didn't stop. Grant said, we just stopped being visible. She zoomed the display to show ship construction, massive vessels being built in deep space technologies that made the old fleets look like children's toys. For 3,000 years, humanity prepared. Monroe stated, we built assuming the peace would someday end. Torres pulled up specifications. Quantum shield generators that adapt to enemy weapons in real time. She read, plasma lances that cut through standard armor like paper, faster than light. Engines 3 times faster than current galactic models. And the Ghost Armada. Carter said, the hologram shifted to show 500 warships drifting in the void between stars. They were beautiful and terrible. Each ship was twice the size of a standard Krenathi cruiser. Each one carried weapons the Council had never seen. We built them in secret over the last millennium. Grant explained, using resources from hidden mining operations and manufacturing facilities scattered across space. Where are they now? Monroe asked, moving toward Council space. Torres confirmed. They'll arrive at the Krenathi border in 72 hours. An alarm sounded. Sir. A communications officer called out. Long-range sensors detect massive fleet movements in Krenathi space. The hologram updated to show enemy forces. Thousands of ships moving toward human territory. They're mobilizing everything, Torres reported. The current count shows 5,000 warships. Some officers looked nervous. 5,000 against 500, seemed like terrible odds. Monroe smiled. Show them our defensive positions. The hologram zoomed to human colonies. Each world was surrounded by layered shields, orbital weapons platforms numbered in the hundreds per planet fighter, wings ready to launch. Every colony has been fortified. Grant explained. Our peaceful colonies are actually military strongholds that can hold against fleets 10 times this size. And the stations? Carter asked. All 17 research stations are actually forward operating bases, Torres said. Each one is armed and shielded. The hologram showed Station Galileo 7 from the outside. It looked like a simple scientific outpost. The image peeled away layers to reveal hidden weapons railguns, powerful enough to punch through battleship armor missile. Batteries loaded with antimatter warheads, shield, generators that could withstand sustained bombardment. The Kredathi are heading there first. Torres noted. War Master Krevzak's fleet is moving to destroy it as a show of force. Let them come. Carter said quietly. Monroe sent out orders across all human military channels. Activate Protocol Awakening. He commanded. All forces to combat readiness. Throughout human space, things long hidden came to life. Weapons platforms powered up, shield networks activated. Hidden fleets began emerging from their secret bases. Estimated casualties if they attack Galileo 7? Monroe asked. Torres ran calculations. If the station were actually a normal research outpost, 100%. She replied. But given its true capabilities and the element of surprise when they realize what it really is, Kredathi casualties estimated at 40 to 60% of attacking force. And the crew? Captain Brandon Walsh has evacuated non-essential personnel to underground bunkers. Torres confirmed. He and his defense team are ready. Carter pulled up a communication line to Walsh. Captain, the Kredathi fleet is heading your way. Walsh's voice came back steady. Understood, Admiral, and we're prepared. You can withdraw if you want. Carter offered. We can defend an empty station. Respectfully, sir. No, Walsh replied. Someone needs to be here to press the button when they arrive. Monroe stepped closer to the communication panel. Captain Walsh, you're authorized to reveal the station's true nature when the enemy is in optimal range. Acknowledged. General, and it'll be one hell of a surprise. The line closed. Grant pulled up historical records. Sir, there's something else they've forgotten. She displayed psychological profiles of human behavior. During the First Contact War, the Kredathi kept being surprised by human tactics. Grant explained. They would think they had us cornered, and then we'd do something unexpected. They saw it as chaos. Monroe remembered. They couldn't understand our adaptability. It's more than that. Grant said. They fundamentally misunderstand how humans think, and they still do after 3,000 years. Torres looked up from her station. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Unity Station, and it's Commander Hayes. Daniel's face appeared on the screen. The Kredathi have officially declared war, he reported calmly. 4 other council species have pledged support to the Empire. Which ones? Monroe asked. The Torvin, the Zekara, the Minari, and the Felden, Daniel listed. They're sending token forces to support the Kredathi, mostly to maintain political alliances. Total enemy strength? Approximately 7,000 ships. They believe overwhelming. Force will make this quick. Carter smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Let them believe it until it's too late. Admiral. Daniel asked, Are we ready? We've been ready for 3,000 years. Carter replied. They're about to remember why they were afraid of us, Monroe added. Send a message to Captain Walsh and tell him the galaxy is watching. Already done. Daniel confirmed. And sir, one more thing. Yes? The Nalvine ambassador pulled me aside after the declaration. Daniel said, She's old enough to remember stories from the First Contact War. What did she say? She said her grandmother told her something once. Daniel recalled, when humans smile before battle, It means they know something you don't. Monroe looked at the hologram showing Cretaceous forces moving confidently toward what they thought was easy prey. That's exactly right, he said. And what we know is that they've made a terrible mistake. Across the galaxy, the Cretaceous Empire prepared for a quick and decisive victory. They remembered humans as stubborn, but ultimately containable. They forgot that 3,000 years was enough time to change everything. On Station Galileo 7, Captain Brandon Walsh and Lieutenant Ashley Kim watched the approaching fleet on their sensors. 200 ships. Kim reported. They're not even trying to hide their approach. Why would they? Walsh replied. They think we're unarmed researchers. When do we show them different? Walsh checked the countdown. When they're close enough, the retreat would cost them more ships than pressing forward. Kim smiled grimly. They're going to be very surprised. That's the idea. Walsh agreed. Above them, hidden weapon systems waited in darkness below them. The station's true nature remained concealed, and all across human space, forces that had prepared for 3,000 years began moving into position. The long peace was over. The galaxy was about to remember what humanity could do. Commander Daniel Hayes stood in the grand chamber of Unity Station and watched as delegates from 40 species celebrated 3,000 years of peace. The chamber sparkled with lights from a dozen worlds, while music from the aquatic Nalvine people filled the air with haunting melodies. Ambassador Lauren Mitchell stood beside Daniel and smiled at the display, though her eyes held concern. They've forgotten, she whispered to him. Daniel nodded slightly and kept his expression neutral. The celebration marked the Treaty of Silent Stars, an agreement that ended the bloodiest war the galaxy had ever known. High Chancellor Vrexter of the Cretaceous Empire rose from his seat, and his insectoid form clicked and chittered as he moved to the central platform. The Cretaceous stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and armor-like shells that gleamed under the station lights. 3,000 years ago, Vrexter announced, his voice translated through dozens of devices. Our empire and the human colonies nearly destroyed each other. The chamber fell silent. We fought for 20 years and billions died on both sides. Daniel remembered the history well, even though it happened long before his birth. Humanity had just begun expanding beyond their solar system when they encountered the Cretaceous Empire. Empire saw the young species as a threat and struck first. Humans fought back with desperate fury. The Treaty of Silent Stars brought peace. Vrexter continued. Humanity agreed to limits on their expansion, and we agreed to leave them in peace. That was the sanitized version. The real story was darker. Humanity had been winning the war despite the Cretaceous' superior numbers. Human tactics, adaptability, and sheer stubbornness had turned the tide. The treaty came because both sides stood on the edge of mutual destruction. Humanity chose peace and accepted restrictions on their territory, the Sol System and 12 colony worlds. No further expansion, no military presence beyond those boundaries. The galaxy thought humans had surrendered. Humans knew different. However, Vrexter's voice turned cold and his mandibles clicked sharply. We have discovered that humanity has violated the treaty. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Daniel felt Lauren tense beside him, but he remained calm. Human research stations have been found beyond their permitted boundaries, the Cretaceous Chancellor declared. 17 stations in neutral space, all established within the last century. Council Speaker Nalvine, an aquatic being in a mobility tank, floated forward. Commander Hayes, how do you respond to these accusations? Daniel stepped to the speaker's platform, and his boots echoed in the sudden silence. The stations are scientific outposts, he said clearly. They are unarmed and staffed by researchers studying cosmic phenomena. The treaty forbids expansion. Rex hissed. The treaty forbids military expansion, Daniel corrected. These stations have no weapons, no soldiers, no territorial claims. Semantics. The Kredathi leader snapped his forearms, gesturing sharply. You have gone beyond your boundaries, and this violates the spirit of our agreement. Other delegates began voicing opinions. Some supported the Kredathalers. Seemed uncertain. Nalvine's speaker raised a tentacle for silence. The council must vote. Nalvine announced. Do the human stations violate the Treaty of Silent Stars? The vote came swiftly. 32 species voted yes. Only 7 voted no and abstained. The council has spoken, Nalvine declared. Humanity has 48 hours to withdraw all stations beyond treaty boundaries. And if we refuse? Lauren asked from beside Daniel Vrex. Thurex. Mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. Then the treaty is broken, and the Kredathi Empire will consider itself at war with humanity. The chamber erupted and shocked. Voices. Daniel raised his hand, and the gesture somehow cut through the noise. We understand, he said calmly. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, barely noticeable. But several delegates saw it. The Torvan ambassador leaned to his aide and whispered, Why does the human smile when his species faces destruction? Ignorance, the aide replied. They don't remember the Empire's true power. Daniel and Lauren left the chamber together, once in the corridor outside. Lauren activated a privacy field around them. They've really forgotten, she said quietly. 3,000 years is a long time, Daniel replied. New generations have grown up knowing only peace. Do we accept the ultimatum? Daniel pulled out a secure communication device. Protocol Awakening, he said into it. Authorization Haze 77 Alpha. A voice crackled back immediately. Confirmed. Initiating sequence. Lauren took a deep breath. It's really happening. They chose this, Daniel said. We gave them 3,000 years of peace. What do you think they'll do when they find out? Daniel's smile returned, broader this time. They'll remember why the peace lasted so long. Back on Earth. Alarms began sounding, and Strategic Command General Patrick Monroe stood in the war room as displays lit up with data. Message from Commander Hayes confirmed. An officer reported. Protocol Awakening is active. Dr. Melissa Grant, the chief historian and military analyst, stepped forward. Begin the briefing. Monroe ordered. Grant activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy. For 3,000 years, she began. The Council has believed humanity accepted the treaty from weakness. Red dots appeared on the map, marking human territory. They think we've been confined, limited, contained. The map suddenly filled with thousands of new markers. Blue dots spread across the galaxy like stars appearing in a night sky. They're wrong. Monroe watched the display and felt a grim satisfaction. Show them what we've built. The hologram zoomed to show fleets of ships, hidden bases, weapons platforms, and networks of sensors spanning light years. During 3,000 years of peace, humanity never stopped preparing, Grant continued. We built a civilization that spans far beyond our visible colonies. The Ghost Armada? Monroe asked, standing by in deep space. An officer confirmed. 500 ships ready to move on your command. Monroe nodded slowly. Humanity had spent 3 millennia preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Heavy built weapons the galaxy had never imagined. They'd created defenses that would shock even the Kredathi Empire. Most importantly, they'd learned patience. Send response to the Council, Monroe ordered. We respectfully decline the ultimatum, and our stations will remain. An aide looked shocked. Sir, that's a declaration of war. Monroe's expression hardened. No, he corrected. It's a reminder. Across human space, military bases came alive. Planetary shields activated around the 12 official colonies. Defense fleets moved into position, hidden weapons arrays powered up. In the darkness between stars, the Ghost Armada began its long journey toward Council Space on Unity Station. Rexter received humanity's response. He read it twice and then crushed the data tablet in one clawed hand. They refuse. He announced to his war council, impossible. One advisor chittered. They must know they cannot win. Pride, another suggested. They remember their ancestors' victories and think history will repeat. Rexter stood and his armor plates rattled with anticipation. Mobilize the fleet, he commanded. We will crush these upstart mammals and remind the galaxy of the Empire's power. 5,000 Cretathi warships began moving toward human space. Other species watched nervously. The Torvan ambassador contacted his homeworld. The humans refused the Vermerstons. The Fdiers of an ambassador contacted his homeworld. The humans refused the ultimatum, he reported. Are they insane? The response came, I don't know, the ambassador admitted. But I saw Commander Hayes smile when war was declared. A smile means nothing. Perhaps, the ambassador said. But old records mention something about humans and their reactions to danger. What do the records say? The ambassador pulled up ancient files from the First War. They say that humans smile before they strike. Station Galileo 7 hung in the darkness like a small moon from the outside. It looked peaceful. A collection of modules and sensor arrays inside. Captain Brandon Walsh stood in the command center and watched 200 Cretathi warships approach. Range 2 million kilometers and closing. Lieutenant Ashley Kim reported Walsh activated station-wide communications. All personnel to evacuation bunkers. He ordered. This is not a drill. Throughout the station, 47 scientists and support staff moved quickly to hidden shelters deep below the surface. Station had been built on a small asteroid, and the bunkers were carved into its core. Bunkers sealed. Kim confirmed after 10 minutes. Only defensive crew remaining. Walsh nodded his. Team numbered just 12 people, 12 humans against 200 ships. The odds would have seemed impossible. If those 12 didn't know the truth, incoming transmission. The communications officer announced. Walsh gestured for it to be put on screen. War Master Krevzak appeared. A massive Cretathi with scars across his shell and 4 arms ending in clawed hands. Human station. Krevzak's voice rumbled through translation. You are in violation of the Treaty of Silent Stars. This is Captain Brandon Walsh, he replied calmly. We are a scientific research facility operating in neutral space. The treaty forbids your presence here, Krevzak stated. You have 1 hour to evacuate. We respectfully decline. Walsh said. Krevzak's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. Then you choose death. Human. War Master, Walsh said carefully. Before you proceed, let me ask you something. Speak quickly. Do you know why the Treaty of Silent Stars was signed? Krevzak seemed surprised by the question. The Empire contained your expansion, he answered. We forced you to accept limits, Walsh smiled slightly. That's what you were told, but the truth is different. Lies will not save you. 3,000 years ago, Walsh continued. The war ended because both sides stood on the edge of destruction and humanity chose peace. You surrendered, Krevzak insisted. We chose not to finish what we started, Walsh corrected. We gave you 3,000 years of peace, and now you're throwing that gift away. Krevzak's 4 arms gestured dismissively. Empty words from a doomed station. Last chance. War Master, Walsh said quietly. Withdraw your forces and we can still avoid bloodshed. The only blood will be yours. Human. The transmission ended. Kim looked at Walsh. Well? We tried. Yes, we did, Walsh agreed. Now, let's show them what they've forgotten. He activated a secure channel to Strategic Command. Admiral Carter. The Cretathi have rejected all warnings. Carter's voice came back immediately. You're authorized to reveal defensive capabilities. Captain, and make it count. Acknowledged. Walsh replied he turned to his crew. Positions everyone and remember. Let them commit fully before we show our hand. The Cretathea fleet moved into attack. Formation 200 ships against one small station. They didn't even bother with sophisticated tactics. War Master Krevzak ordered a simple frontal assault. All ships, open fire, he commanded. Destroy the station completely. Energy beams and missiles launched from 200 vessels. The barrage was enough to vaporize a small moon. Kim watched the incoming fire on her display. Impact in 30 seconds. She reported. Shields? Walsh asked. Not yet. Kim replied. Let them think their first volley succeeded. The weapons struck. Explosions loomed across the station's surface. External modules shattered. Sensor arrays disintegrated. Debris scattered into space on the Cretathea flagship. Officers cheered. Target destroyed. One reported. Revzak watched the expanding cloud of debris. Humans are weak, he declared. Move to the next station. Then something impossible happened. Debris cloud began to clear beneath the shattered external structures. Something gleamed. The station's true form emerged. A massive fortress bristling with weapons. What is that? A Cretathea officer chittered in confusion. Energy readings spiked across their sensors. War Master, another officer called out. Detecting power signatures that don't match any known research facility. Krevzak stared at the display. The station was 10 times larger than they'd thought. All of it had been hidden beneath a false exterior. They tricked us, he realized on Galileo 7. Walsh gave a single command. Fire everything. The station came. 11 railguns that had been silent for centuries roared to life. Magnetic accelerators launched projectiles at relativistic speeds. Each round carried enough kinetic energy to punch through battleship armor like paper. Plasma batteries opened up. Streams of superheated matter crossed the void when they struck Cretathea shields. They didn't just penetrate. They melted. Antimatter missiles, launched from hidden Silas Point defense systems, tried to intercept them. Most succeeded, but 3 got through when antimatter met matter. The resulting explosions lit up space like newborn stars. Direct hits on enemy cruisers 7, 14, and 22. Kim reported. All 3 destroyed. The Cretathea fleet scattered in confusion. Feed expected an easy target instead. They'd found a fortress that hit back harder than their own battleships. Return fire, Krevzak screamed. Destroy that station. His ships tried to regroup. Energy beams lashed out at Galileo-7 this time. Shields materialized. Quantum barriers flickered to life around the station. They shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist when Cretathea weapons struck them. The shields absorbed the energy and adapted. Each shot made the shields stronger against that type of weapon. Their shields are learning, a Cretathea tactical officer reported in disbelief. Impossible. Krevzak snapped. Focus all fire on one section. 50 ships concentrated their weapons on a single point. Shields there flickered and strained for a moment. It seemed they might break. Then the station's weapons found their optimal firing solution. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries. Every weapon on Galileo 7 fired in perfect coordination. Railgun rounds punched through shields, weakened by previous hits. Plasma beams followed the holes and melted internal systems. Missiles struck exposed sections in 30 seconds. 12 Cretathea ships were destroyed. 20 more were heavily damaged. Withdraw, Krevzak finally ordered. Pull back to 5 million kilometers. His fleet retreated and left wreckage drifting in space on the station. Kim checked casualty reports. No injuries on our side, she confirmed. Bunkers held perfectly, and defensive systems performed above expectations. Walsh opened the channel on all frequencies. "This is Captain Brandon Walsh of Station Galileo 7 to all Credithi forces," he broadcast. "You attacked a facility you thought was defenseless. And you were wrong." He paused. "We gave you 3,000 years of peace, and you've thrown it away. And now you're going to remember why that peace was necessary." "This station is one of 17, Walsh continued. "Every one of them is armed like this, and that's just the beginning. Across the galaxy, the other 16 stations began revealing their true nature at Station Newton 4. Credithi scouts arrived to find weapons platforms deploying at Station Darwin 9. An alien fleet met shields they couldn't penetrate at Station Hawking 12. Human defenders opened fire first. Every station told the same story. What looked like peaceful research outposts were actually military strongholds the Credithi had walked into. 17 simultaneous ambushes, but the real shock came when long-range sensors detected something new at the edge of Credithi space. 500 ships appeared. They'd been there all along. Invisible to sensors, now they'd decloak it. Ghost Armada had arrived on the flagship Defiant. Admiral Kevin Carter stood on the bridge and watched Credithi territory on his displays. "All ships report ready." His first officer stated, "Open a channel," Carter ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, including Council diplomatic channels." The communication arrays activated. Carter's message would reach every species in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Kevin Carter of the Human Defense Fleet," he began. "For 3,000 years, humanity has honored the Treaty of Silent Stars. We accepted restrictions on our territory, and we lived within the boundaries set for us. We did this not from weakness, but from wisdom. We chose peace because we could, and we spent those 3,000 years building, learning, and preparing." He gestured, and tactical displays showing human capabilities began broadcasting alongside his words. Hidden bases throughout the galaxy, advanced weapons beyond anything the Council had seen, defensive networks that could hold against fleets 10 times larger. The Credithi Empire has declared war, and they will learn what we've become. "This is humanity's only warning," Carter stated. "Withdraw your forces, return to your borders, and we can still find peace, or press forward and discover why we accepted the treaty from a position of strength, not surrender." The transmission ended on Unity Station. Delegates watched in stunned silence. Ambassador Laura Mitchell stood beside Commander Daniel Hayes. "They're terrified," she observed. "Good," Daniel replied. "Fear might save lives on both sides." High Chancellor Rexter watched the same transmission in his war room. His advisors chittered nervously. "This changes nothing," Brexak declared, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "We have 7,000 ships to their 500, but their technology." One advisor protested. "Numbers will overwhelm technology." The Chancellor insisted. He sent new orders. Full Imperial mobilization. Every Credithi warship was to converge on human space. 4 allied species sent their promised supper. Torvin, Zekara, Minari, and Feldan forces moved to join the Empire. War Master Krevzak regrouped his battered fleet. Lost 32 ships to 1 station. The Vex Prime system had never seen so many warships in one place. 7,000 vessels from 5 different species gathered. In attack formation, the Credithi Empire brought 5,000 ships. Their allies contributed 2,000 more against them. Humanity fielded 500. War Master Krevzak stood on the bridge of his flagship Conqueror and surveyed the assembled fleet. 14-1, his tactical officer reported. "Those are excellent odds." High Chancellor Rex III come personally to witness humanity's defeat. "Begin the attack," he commanded. "Show the galaxy that the Empire still rules." The massive fleet began its advance on the Defiant. Admiral Kevin Carter watched them come. Commander Nathan Cross stood at the fighter control station. "Sir, requesting permission to launch fighter wings," Cross said. "Not yet," Carter replied. "Let them get closer." His bridge crew looked nervous. 7,000 ships against 500 seemed like suicide. But Carter had spent 40 years preparing for this moment. "Weapons status?" he asked. "All plasma lances charged," his weapons officer reported. "Railgun batteries loaded and antimatter torpedoes ready." "Shields?" "Quantum barriers at full power," the defensive coordinator confirmed. "Adaptive protocols active." Carter pulled up a tactical display. The enemy fleet was spreading into a wide formation. They wanted to surround the human ships. Standard. Council tactics predictable. All ships. Carter broadcast. "Execute formation Delta 7. The Ghost Armada shifted instead of spreading to match the enemy formation. Human ships clustered together to the Krethethi. It looked like the humans were making themselves easier targets. "They're bunching up," Krevzak observed. "Concentrate fire on their center." 2,000 ships focused their weapons on the human formation energy. Beams and missiles launched in a devastating barrage. The distance close to optimal firing range. "Shields up." Carter ordered. Quantum barriers materialized around every human ship. The enemy barrage struck colors that shouldn't exist, rippled across the shield's Krethethi. Weapons pounded against them. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the shields began to adapt energy. Beams that struck at one frequency found the shields already adjusting by the third volley. The barriers had learned to deflect 90% of incoming fire. "Impossible," Rexter chittered. "Their shields are changing. All ships switch to kinetic weapons." Krevzak ordered railgun. Rounds from the Krethethi fleet hammered the human shields. These worked better kinetic. Energy was harder to deflect, but the human shields adapted to that too. They created gravity wells that slowed incoming projectiles, reduced their impact to manageable levels. "Now," Carter said quietly, "show them what we brought." Human ships opened fire. Plasma lances cut across the void. These weren't the standard plasma weapons the Council used. Human plasma burned 10 times hotter when they struck enemy shields. They didn't just penetrate. They melted everything they touched. A Krethethi cruiser took a direct hit. Its shields collapsed instantly. The hull underneath turned molten and the ship broke apart. "Return fire," Krevzak screamed, but human ships were already moving there. Engines propelled them at speeds Council vessels couldn't match. They wove through the enemy formation like dancer Krethethi. Targeting systems couldn't keep up. Launch fighters. Carter ordered. Commander Cross grinned. "All wings. You are cleared for launch." 500 human fighters burst from carrier bays. They were small, fast, and deadly. Each one was piloted by humans who'd trained their entire lives for this moment. Cross led his wing personally. "Remember your training," he called over the squadron channel. "Hit fast, hit hard, and don't stay still." The fighters accelerated to impossible speeds. Krethethi point defense systems tried to track them, failed. Human fighters moved faster than sensors could follow. They struck like lightning. Each fighter carried micromissiles with antimatter warheads small enough to evade defenses, powerful enough to cripple cruisers. Cross selected targets with practiced ease. Wing Alpha, take the left flank, and Wing Beta, center formation. Wing Gamma with me. We're going for their command ships. His fighter screamed through Space Krethethi ships tried to swat him down. He jinked left, rolled right, cut engines, and drifted past a barrage. Then he fired 6 missiles, launched 3, hit a Krethethi battleship's engine section. The ship listed in atmosphere vented from ruptured hulls behind Cross. His wingmates repeated the performance. 50 enemy ships were damaged in the first 5 minutes. The Krethethi fleet began to panic. They outnumbered the humans 14 to 1, but numbers meant Nothing when you couldn't hit your target and when the enemy could destroy your ships with terrifying ease. Carter watched the tactical display. Enemy casualties were mounting rapidly. Human losses 0. Admiral, his tactical officer reported. Enemy fleet is trying to regroup. Don't let them, Carter ordered. Press the attack. The Ghost Armada surged forward. Human ships moved with perfect coordination. Their tactical AI predicted enemy movements before they happened. Every shot found its mark. Every maneuver left enemies confused. This was what 3,000 years of preparation looked like. Meanwhile, on Unity Station, delegates watched the battle in real time. Torvin, ambassador, stared at displays showing his fleet getting shredded. Withdraw our forces, he ordered. Immediately, the Zekara delegate agreed. This is not what we signed up for. One by one, the allied species began pulling back. They'd pledged token support to maintain political relationships. They hadn't agreed to suicide within an hour of battle. 2,000 allied ships retreated. The Kredathi Empire stood alone. Vrexthor watched his fleet dying. 400 ships destroyed, 800 more damaged, and humanity still hadn't lost a single vessel. How? He demanded. How are they doing this? War Master Krevzak had no answer. His tactical training hadn't prepared him for this. Human technology was beyond anything in council records. Their tactics seemed to anticipate every move. Their coordination was flawless. We need to withdraw, he finally admitted. Never. Vrexthor snapped. The Empire does not retreat. Then the Empire will be destroyed, Krevzak said bluntly on the defiant council speaker. Nelvin's image appeared on the main screen. Admiral Carter, the aquatic being, said, I request an immediate ceasefire. Carter considered the request. His fleet was winning decisively, but victory wasn't the same as slaughter. 12 hours, he agreed. All forces will hold position for 12 hours while we talk. Thank you. Nalvin replied with evident relief. Carter sent orders to his fleet. All ships cease fire and maintain current positions. The battle stopped. Human ships held their ground. Kredathi vessels limped back to regroup. Cross brought his fighter wings home. He landed on the Finesport, defiant, and removed his helmet. His hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. How many did we get? Another pilot asked. Preliminary count, 600 enemy ships destroyed or disabled, someone reported. 0 human casualties. The pilots looked at each other in amazement. They'd trained for this scenario, but experiencing it was different. Carter stepped into the fighter bay. Excellent work, Commander Cross, he said. Just following the training. Sir, Cross replied. Now comes the hard part, Carter stated. Sir? We have to explain to them why we won, the Admiral said, and make them understand that this was mercy. He returned to the bridge and opened a channel on all council frequencies. This is Admiral Carter to all council members. He broadcast. What you witnessed today was humanity holding back across the galaxy. Species listened in stunned silence. Our fleet of 500 defeated 7,000 of yours, Carter continued. We did this with minimal effort and 0 casualties. Some of you are wondering how this is possible. The answer is simple. We spent 3,000 years preparing while you forgot. Carter activated displays showing human capabilities. Our quantum shields adapt to any weapon in real time. Our plasma weapons burn hotter than stellar cores. Our engines are 3 times faster than your best ships. Our tactical AI can predict your movements before you make them. Most importantly, we train for this and you train for peace. He paused to let that sink in. But here's what you need to understand. This fleet represents 20% of humanity's total military strength. The number caused gasps across the council. 20%, that meant humanity had 2,000 More ships hidden somewhere, plus all their planetary defenses, plus whatever other surprises they'd prepared. We could have struck at any time during the last 3,000 years, Carter explained. We could have conquered Council space whenever we wanted. We didn't because we chose peace over power. We chose to let you live in safety because that's what civilized beings do. The Kretathi Empire has thrown that gift away. He looked directly at the Diet camera. High Chancellor Vrexther, War Master Krevzak. This is your last chance, and withdraw all forces immediately, or we will stop holding back. The transmission ended on the Conqueror. Krevzak turned to Vrexther, Chancellor. We must accept their terms. The Empire has never surrendered. Vrexther insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Then perhaps it's time the Empire learned wisdom. Krevzak replied. He pulled up damage report. 60% of the Kretathi fleet was gone, not retreated, gone, destroyed, or so damaged they'd never fly again. And the humans hadn't even tried. They're not bluffing. Krevzak said quietly. Everything they've shown. US is real, and if they have 4 times more strength hidden away. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Vrexther understood the implication. If humanity unleashed its full military might, the Kretathi Empire would cease to exist. Unity Station had never been so crowded. Delegates from every council species gathered in the Grand Chamber. But this time, nobody was celebrating. Commander Daniel Hayes stood at the human delegation platform and watched. High Chancellor Vrexther entered. The Kretathi leader looked diminished. His shell bore new cracks from stress. His forearms hung limply at his sides. War Master Krevzak followed behind him, and the soldiers' expression was carefully neutral. Ambassador Lauren Mitchell leaned close to Daniel. They look defeated, she whispered. They are, Daniel replied quietly. The question is whether they've learned from it. Council Speaker Nalveen called the session to order. We gather to discuss terms of peace, the aquatic being announced. The Kretathi Empire has requested negotiations. Vrexther stepped forward for a long moment. He said nothing. Then he spoke words that had never been uttered in Kretathi history. The Empire was wrong, he admitted. We attacked humanity believing them weak, and we were mistaken. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. We have lost 60% of our fleet, Vrexther continued. Thousands of our people are dead, and all because of our pride. He looked directly at Daniel. What are your terms, Commander Hayes? Daniel gestured to Ambassador Mitchell. Spent 3 days drafting the agreement. First, Mitchell began, High Chancellor Vrexther and his War Council will step down from power. Vrexther's mandibles clicked in protest. You ask us to destroy our government? We ask you to take responsibility for your actions, Mitchell corrected. A civilian government will replace the current military leadership, and the Empire will hold open elections within 1 standard year. Admiral Kevin Carter's image appeared on screens throughout the chamber. This is not negotiable, he stated from the Defiant. Your leadership started this war, and they will not be trusted to keep the peace. Vrexther looked at his advisors. They offered no support. He was alone, agreed. He finally said Mitchell continued reading terms. Second, all restrictive clauses of the Treaty of Silent Stars are nullified, and humanity will no longer be confined to designated territories. This time, other species protested. The Torvan delegate stood. That gives humans unlimited expansion rights, he objected. Yes, Daniel said simply. They could colonize anywhere. Another delegate added, we could. Daniel agreed, just as you can. But your military strength, the Torvan delegate protested, will remain exactly where it is, Daniel assured him. We're not interested in conquest, and we're interested in freedom. What's the difference? Someone asked. Mitchell answered. Conquest means taking what belongs to others, and freedom means going where we choose without permission. We don't want your worlds, Daniel added. We want the right to explore space without artificial boundaries imposed by fear. The delegates looked at each other uneasily. Third, Mitchell continued, humanity will receive full council membership with veto power over military actions. This caused an uproar. Multiple species objected simultaneously. That makes humans more powerful than any other member. The Zekara delegate protested. Yes, Daniel confirmed. It does. Why should you have special privileges? Carter's voice cut through the noise. Because we've proven we can destroy any fleet in the galaxy, he stated bluntly. Because we have technology centuries beyond yours. And because we chose peace when we could have chosen dominance. You want to know why humans deserve veto power? Carter continued. Ask yourselves, who would you rather have that authority? Us, or the species that just attacked research stations without provocation? Silence felt it was an uncomfortable truth. Humanity had shown overwhelming military superiority, but they'd also shown restraint. They could have wiped out the Kretathi fleet completely. Instead, they'd stopped when their point was made. Fourth, Mitchell said into the quiet. Establishment of a mutual defense pact between humanity and the Council. This surprised everyone. You want to defend us? The Minari delegate asked. We want to prevent future wars, Daniel explained. If another species decides to break the peace, humanity will help maintain order. This makes you the galaxy's police force. Someone objected. No, Lauren said firmly. It makes us partners in maintaining stability, and any council member can call for our assistance. But we won't interfere in internal affairs. War Master Krevzak spoke for the first time. You're offering to protect the same species that just tried to destroy you? We're offering to protect civilization, Daniel corrected. Including yours. Why? Because that's what civilized beings do, Carter answered. We could hold grudges. But that just creates future conflicts, and we prefer peace. Krevzak looked at the human delegation with something like respect. You are strange creatures, he observed. We're practical. Daniel replied. Mitchell read the final term. Fifth, establishment of a technology sharing agreement on terms acceptable to humanity. Meaning what? The Felden delegate asked. We will share some of our advances with council members, Mitchell explained. But we decide what, when, and with whom. Why not share everything? Would you give weapons to children? Daniel asked. The question hung in the air. Some of our technology is dangerous in the wrong hands, he continued. We'll share medical advances, agricultural improvements, and peaceful applications immediately. Military technology will be shared gradually as trust is rebuilt. Council Speaker Nalveen reviewed the terms. These requirements are strict, she observed. They're fair, Daniel countered. We're not demanding territory, reparations, or subjugation, and we're asking for accountability and partnership. Nalveen nodded slowly. I agree, she said. These terms are reasonable given the circumstances. She looked at Rexthur. High Chancellor, do you accept? Rex, Thur's shoulders sagged. His entire life had been spent in service to the Empire. Now he was being asked to dismantle everything he built, but the alternative was extinction. The Empire accepts, he said quietly. Other delegates voted. Quickly every species agreed. Nobody wanted to risk human displeasure. The new treaty was signed. Electroniclinanons announced. The Accord of Remembered Lessons is now in effect. As delegates began to leave, Rexthur approached Daniel. May I speak with you privately? Daniel gestured to a side chamber. They entered with Mitchell and Krevzakins. The door closed. Rexthur asked, why did you really accept the original treaty? Daniel considered the question. You want the truth? Please. 3,000 years ago, humanity was winning the war, Daniel explained. Our forces were pushing deep into Empire territory, and another year of fighting would have seen us at your homeworld. Rexthur's mandibles twitched. Then why stop? Because our leaders looked at what we become, Mitchell answered. We'd started as explorers and traders, and the war turned us into killers. We realized that conquering you would require destroying everything we valued about ourselves. Daniel added, so we chose to step back. Mitchell continued. We accepted territorial limits because what we really wanted was to be left alone to grow and build and explore. The treaty gave us that. Daniel finished. Krevzak spoke, enduring 3,000 years. You prepared for war? We prepared for the possibility, Daniel corrected. But we hoped it would never come. I don't understand, Rexter admitted. You had overwhelming power and you chose not to use it. Power isn't about what you can do, Mitchell explained. It's about what you choose not to do. We could have crushed you, Daniel said. But we chose to offer terms instead, and that choice is what separates civilization from barbarism. Rexter was quiet for a long time. My people have much to learn, he finally said. We all do. Daniel replied gently. They returned to the main chamber over the next weeks. The Kradathi government transitioned to civilian control. Rexthor stepped down as agreed. Elections were held. A former scientist named Vexthor became the new chancellor. She immediately reached out to humanity. We wish to learn from you, she said in her first communication with Daniel. Not your weapons, but your wisdom. Daniel smiled. We'd be happy to help on Earth. DR Melissa Grant began compiling a comprehensive history of the conflict. She interviewed soldiers, pilots, and commanders. What should people remember about this war? She asked Admiral Carter. That it didn't have to happen, he replied. And that peace is always worth fighting for, even when fighting means restraint. Commander Nathan Cross returned to training new pilots. What was it like? The students asked. Fighting in a real war? Terrifying and necessary, Cross answered. We had trained our whole lives for those moments, and I hope you never have to use your training the same way. But if you do, he added, remember that the goal isn't to destroy the enemy, and the goal is to end the conflict. Captain Brandon Walsh received a medal for his defense of Station Galileo 7. He accepted it quietly. I just did my job, he said. You held off 200 ships with 12 people, the presenter argued. Because we were prepared, Walsh replied. Because humanity never forgot that peace requires vigilance. Across the galaxy, things slowly returned to normal, but it was a different normal. Every species now understood humanity's true capabilities. Trade routes adjusted. Diplomatic relationships shifted. Nobody wanted to test human patience again on Unity. Station 6 months after the war. Daniel and Lauren watched Earth through the observation window. Do you think it'll last? Lauren asked. The peace? For a while, Daniel replied. Fear and respect are powerful motivators. And when those fade? We'll still be ready, Daniel said. We're always ready.